ABC Mondays. The Bachelor is back, and everyone is falling for America's heartthrob, Joey Graziadei.
Chef's kiss, 10 out of 10.
He's taking another shot at love.
I am definitely ready to find my wife.
But will he find his perfect match?
I am freaking out.
I'm about to lose it.
Something I need to know,
I'm done here.
I thought it would be easier.
The Bachelor. New Mondays, 8/7 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Shaq here, spitting fast-acting pain relief for 2024 with Icy Hot. Take it from me. Sticking to your new workout routines can lead to sore muscles. Icy Hot starts working instantly to dull the pain with the icy cool sensation. Then, the warming sensation relaxes it away. Feel the power of Icy Hot's contrast therapy. Ice works fast. Heat makes it last. Icy Hot.
This episode is brought to you by the new true crime docuseries American Nightmare, only on Netflix. In 2015, the Vallejo, California Police Department received a strange phone call about a kidnapping. But when the truth is stranger than fiction, you won't know who to trust or what is real. A fast-paced true crime thriller with cliffhangers at every turn. Watch American Nightmare now, only on Netflix.
With Capella University's FlexPath format, you can set your own deadlines, learn at your pace, and access most coursework from anywhere at any time. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
Can you dig it? With a Bobcat compact excavator, you can. Up to $6,000 in rebates on select models and 0% financing for 36 months.
Check us out at Bobcat of Charleston in North Charleston.
Hey there, Duke fans, and welcome to episode 59 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. We are recording to you. This is Sunday, October 23rd, and I am feeling great. You know why? Because Duke basketball is back. Also, because my Lions beat the Washington Redskins, and I can walk around my city of Washington, D.C. with my head held high. But before we get into everything, I want to bring in my usual partners in crime. First, out in Atlanta, we have Jason Evans. What's up, Jason?
Not much. I am with you, man. I am so excited that basketball is back. I know it wasn't a regular season game. I know it wasn't even a preseason game, but even a scrimmage, getting to see these guys, that was fun.
Absolutely. We're going to get into that in just a minute. Before that, out in Denver, we have Sam Klein. Also, I believe Sam is the resident Washington Redskins fan on the podcast. So yeah, this is my only chance to say this.
I would save it for baseball season. As I think I told you guys, and I've told other friends that my Redskins fandom at this point is active indifference. So you can talk smack to me about the Redskins, but I don't really care anymore.
That's fine. I mean, this is the one chance I have to walk around DC and not get any crap from other people. But
I can tell you that. We're recording probably 3 hours after the game ended.
Yeah,
and I didn't even know what had happened until you said it just now.
Oh, well, there you go.
So, yep. Oh well, I had a lovely afternoon not watching NFL football.
Yeah, but also we're gonna have a special guest tonight. He is one of our old school friends of the podcast. He was on one of our first ever episodes, and he is back to talk a little basketball with us. He is Newton14 on the DBR forums, and his name is Mark Newton. Mark, welcome back, man.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on. Always great to come on and talk about Duke.
Yeah, absolutely. And why don't we just jump right into it? Last night, on Saturday night, Countdown to Craziness happened. And it's practice has been going on for a couple weeks now officially. But this is the basically unofficial jump start to the season. This is the time when we can meet the players, we get to know them, and we get to see them play for the first time. For most people. So I'm going to start with you, Jason. Jason, did you get a chance to see Countdown to Craziness, and what did you think?
Yeah, I definitely got to see it, and there was a lot of stuff to be very, very impressed with. Luke Kennard, I thought, played fabulously and really, he showed last season there were times where he struggled a little bit shooting, and he showed that was an aberration and that he's going to really fill it up this year for us. But the guy who I think you have to talk about the most to me is him, who was so smooth. It absolutely seemed like he could get his shot anytime he wanted to. There'd been some criticism. Some folks who'd said that in practices, and at least I'd heard this rumor, that he wasn't a guy who passed very much, but I want everyone to go back and watch right at the 14-minute mark. He drives the lane. The defense comes to him, and he does a beautiful dish to Emil Jefferson, who gets fouled on the play. But it showed me that Jason Tatum is capable of passing the ball a little bit. But, man, his jumper, really sweet. He's able to get it off, with ease. He fades away a little bit, and I see why people are comparing him to Kobe Bryant because of that. He really does shoot the way Kobe Bryant did, and before that, the way Michael Jordan did, where they elevate backwards, but they're still able to get their shot off and hit it a tremendous amount of the time. I thought Tatum looked absolutely fabulous. And then Frank Jackson, to me, I thought seemed really strong with the ball, very confident. He's clearly an amazing athlete. There were a couple times where he powered to the rim, and you were like, wow. I was very impressed with him offensively with the ball in his hands. He needs to identify situations better. He needed to help out Grayson Allen more. I mean, Grayson Allen struggled some, and a lot of that was because much of the time it was Grayson and 4 freshmen on the floor together, and that was a tough situation for Grayson because I think the blue team, those freshmen on his team, stood around a lot and just watched while Emil Jefferson and Matt Jones caused chaos on defense, especially when the ball was in Grayson's hands. And so those guys need to learn. They clearly have a lot they need to learn. But it was a lot of fun to watch the new players play. It was great to see Emil Jefferson back on the floor. I thought he looked really great. Marcus Bolden was a little disappointing to me. Grabbed a lot of rebounds, but really, to me, looked like he's still figuring out what to do on offense. When the ball was, he didn't move really well without the ball, and when the ball would get in his hands, he could try and bull his way to the basket a little bit, but didn't seem to have a lot of moves, and I think it's going to take a while for him to really round in the game. But I thought it was great. It was a lot of fun, and I thought the guys looked really, really good. They looked like they deserved that number 1 ranking, especially when you consider that Grayson Allen had a really off day, didn't try to do a lot, and his team struggled as a result. Sam, what about you? What were your big takeaways?
I think I saw a little more from Marcus Bolden than you did. I saw I noted the same that you did, which was that there were some moments where I thought that he could have done more. But I see the athleticism and I see his ability that's going to come up eventually. I was also, and I was going to make a similar point as you did about Frank Jackson and just how athletic he looked. And I know that we had heard about that. I know that he had won the McDonald's All-American dunk contest, and that was all good. So we knew that he was going to be athletic, but we just hadn't seen it yet. I really enjoyed watching the veterans play. I think that Matt Jones didn't try to do too much, even though we did have to see him taking the ball up a couple times. It's not like he was initiating offense like a traditional point guard. I think he was getting it up to the top and then not trying to force anything. And then Emil Jefferson, it was just really great to see back on the court and making a lot of plays. And I think that the announcers may be biasing me here because I was listening to the announcers, and I know that it's Chris Spatola and somebody else who is there to just prop up Duke and talk about how great everybody is. But Emil Jefferson really seemed like he was in midseason form as far as setting up good plays for other guys. He made a couple of good passes, and I was generally pleased with what we saw from him, given how much time he's been out of game speed, game competition. So yeah, I thought that Jefferson
had 5 assists. Emil Jefferson had 5 assists. Matt Jones had 4 assists. Considering neither one of them were the point guard, or I guess Jones sort of was on that team, but Jefferson really, I agree, Jefferson passed the ball really nicely.
And it's gonna be cool to see because a guy like Bolden has a very specific role. He's probably gonna be more about rebounding than anything else. Maybe he becomes a good defender inside. Jefferson can kind of do a lot of things for a dude his size, and I'm curious to see exactly how he's deployed this year because even though he's not a great shooter, he can really do most everything else on the floor. I mean, he has good vision. He has really great rebounding. We know that from years past. He's a great defender at almost every position that you want to put him at. He's not going to defend point guard, but he can probably defend every other position. So he's going to be called on, I think, to do a lot of different things for this team, depending on, who he's playing with. Like playing with Bolden is going to be really different from playing with Jeter and then playing with Giles. And Jefferson's going to have to play with all those guys and then subbing in the different wings. Tatum brings a totally different element just because of his size than any of the other wings do. So when Jefferson's playing next to Tatum, he doesn't need to use his size as much. Maybe he needs to be more aggressive on defense, because I don't know if Tatum is quite there on defense yet. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of different roles that Jefferson's going to have to play for this team. And I think that he's ready for it. And I think that he showed last night that he's prepared to do a lot of different things for this team. So I think that my main takeaway was how ready Emil Jefferson looks to be a star for this team this season.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you guys said. One thing I noticed last night, and we may have to get a judge's ruling on this later on, and somebody's going to have to check us on the boards, but last night I think they introduced Bolden as Marquise Bolden and not Marcus. I've been calling him Marcus this whole time.
I think that we had heard Marquise before, and I was skeptical on pronunciation of names, because if you guys remember on the podcast at some point last year when Javin DeLaurier committed, someone wrote it up somewhere that he was Javin DeLaurier, and I was like, that ain't the way you say that guy's name, but that's what it says in the media, so that's going to be right. But then last night they were calling him DeLaurier, so I was like, okay, thank God we're calling him DeLaurier.
Right.
Do you want to ask the guy who was at the game what his impressions were?
Yeah, let's bring in Mark in this situation. Mark?
Yeah, I'll preface this with I took my 11-year-old daughter to the game last night. She is now a hooked, obsessed, first of all with Grayson Allen, but the whole experience last night just did it. So I was there last night a lot as a fan and making sure she had a good time. But, obviously I still keyed in on certain things. I want to give a shout out to Matt Jones. He takes a lot of grief on our boards. He played some killer defense last night. It boggles my mind the people that don't see the value in him. The guy,
he won the game. Not that there was, but his defense on Grayson Allen and the chaos he caused on defense won the game, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And if he can shut down Grayson, that should tell you something.
Good luck, rest of the nation.
Exactly. So, yeah, Tatum was a stud. I've seen that. Fortunately, this is the third time I'd seen him, but Tatum was a stud last night. It was me, probably Jason, that said I'm not sure about his passing. I've written that on the board, but I think he'll get there. And he doesn't look like a selfish player to me. I hope it didn't come across that way. He's just got such a scorer's mentality.
I've heard that from other people, so it's not just you. And again, in no context where I've heard it has it been that he's selfish or that he's only looking for himself. It's that it's the context of people saying, he's not someone who looks to pass first, and that's not necessarily wrong, because he is a remarkable scorer and clearly can get his shot and hit it. But it's just been something you sort of note when watching his game, that when he gets the ball, he tends to be able to get a shot and take the shot. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you can hit it, that's a good thing.
Yeah, and one quick point, you teed me up perfectly. In the first practice, the general open practice, he took an incredibly bad three from the right wing. It was a step back fade three. Kay actually blew the whistle with the ball midair to kind of say, that's not the shot, and it splashed the nets. And Kay was like, "Oh, carry on." So you're gonna see that he's gonna take shots, I think, and miss that we just bang our heads over, and then there's others they're gonna wow you.
He had a couple last night where, like you said, midway through the air, like, oh, that's a terrible shot, and then it goes in. You're like, it's not a terrible shot anymore. But hopefully he can limit those type of shots that make us all pause. But yeah, there's a couple of those last night.
Yeah,
I would say that if Duke's going to lose a game this season, which be reasonable, Duke's probably going to lose a game at some point this season. It's going to have to be. You can already see it's going to be on a night when both Tatum and Allen aren't able to get their shots to fall, because both of those guys, they create in very different ways, right? Allen creates by driving, and Tatum creates, I think, just by elevating. That Kobe Bryant comparison is really interesting. Tatum's obviously a lot bigger than Kobe Bryant was or is, but right, it's a similar set of moves. Maybe it's more like a cross between Kobe Bryant and Dirk Nowitzki because they're he's about the average of those two sizes. But it's to beat Duke, it's gonna have to be a night when both Tatum and Allen aren't able to hunt their shots appropriately. And honestly, I think that's the only way that you're gonna have to beat Duke is waiting for the night when those shots don't fall. Because the tough thing, I think, being a guy like Tatum, where he's a young guy and he's playing, at a totally new level this year, there might be defenders out there that are able to prevent him from playing that game that he wants to play.
Yeah, but think about what you just said now, and this is such an interesting team. I'll use that word. Okay, say those two guys are off. Wow, Luke Kennard, Harry Giles, Emil Jefferson can do work in the paint. One of the Kentucky boards last night were like, if they post anybody up, it's going to have to be Emil. Well, yeah, I'd be ecstatic if we post Emil up a lot because I'm confident he can score. This team has so many different ways they can score. It's really scary.
No, I want to hold on. Oh, wait, Mark, are you saying that there were like threads on the Kentucky boards about Duke's blue-white game?
Yes.
Because I'm not watching any Kentucky scrimmages. I'm sorry.
Stop underestimating Blue Nation. All right.
There is a link in the Countdown to Craziness thread from last night where they linked back to the Kentucky board and they were unimpressed and we were sloppy and blah, blah, blah. And so I actually went and read it. It was pretty humorous.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But
good jealousy.
But they watch it, though.
Unbelievable jealousy.
Yes, obsession.
Yep.
I want to touch real quickly on a couple guys that I saw last night that I hadn't got a chance to see before, obviously, but really stuck out of me. First, Javon DeLaurier, I thought he had great interior defense at times. He was going up against Emil Jefferson, and so you kind of say, oh, well, he kind of looked bad because Emil Jefferson was playing that well in the post. But he had a couple of great defensive positioning, or just being in the spot to help out on defense in the weak side. I thought that was pretty interesting because I haven't heard a lot about him. He could jump out of the gym. We saw that last night. If you saw in warm-ups, he was jumping and his head was basically looking down the rim every time he went up for a layup during warm-ups or for a dunk. But I think the one thing that will keep him on the floor or put him on the floor is defense. And I think if he is one of those guys that can come in and play spot minutes, interior defense to spell Bolden or spell Jefferson while they're on the bench or Chase Jeter, that's going to be good for our depth. That's going to be good for later on this season when we, undoubtedly will have a couple of times where there's our guys are tired or our guys are just, hitting that wall, especially the freshmen. I think that's going to be good to see. The other thing I saw that was really interesting, Jack White. It was the first time I had seen him play anything, even a YouTube clip, and I like his confidence. He hit 3 threes, I think, last night, and it was not what he hit two. But they were popping shot. They were catch and shoot. They weren't like, hey man, shoot it. He took the ball, and as soon as he got it, he was in the air with it. And it was a pretty good stroke. So I was pretty interested. I was pretty ecstatic to see that even he can shoot a 3-pointer at 6'7", which is not something you see from the last 6'7" freshmen.
I mean, look, let's be clear. Jack White is not going to play much this year.
No,
nor is Javon DeLaurier.
Right. But his defense is itching on the court in this
because we had injuries.
Yeah. But these guys,
4-year guys,
next year and the year after, and probably the year after that, are going to be really good players.
Yes,
they're real dudes, just not this year.
Yeah, 4-year guys. I'm going to describe Javon's athleticism to you in 2 words. Freshman Maggette. That's what I see in terms of.
I don't know. That's
not
pretty
talent,
strong.
Jason.
That's pretty strong.
Not talent. I'm talking athleticism, quickness, jumping ability.
The only reason he could only jump so high was because there's a roof on Cameron Indoor Stadium.
He grabbed a rebound in practice in traffic. I dropped everybody's jaws. I mean, he is an athletic guy, and he's lengthy.
Hey, Donald, I know you're captaining the ship this week. Mm-hmm. You got to get us to Mark's description of the secret practice he went to, or whatever you want to call it. Well, we got to get to that.
We're going to get to that. Let me just say there is one downside that I see from this team just after the countdown to craziness, and I think you guys might agree with this, there's only one basketball. Yep. So the number of scores we have on this team, like, I like the fact that anyone on this team can score 20 points on a given night. We cannot expect all of them to score 20 points on every single night. But I think there's going to be one night where and I think the good thing about this team is that if somebody does have an off night, like Tatum, like Allen, there's somebody behind them that can step up and score 20 points and score or get the rebounds necessary to pull out victory. So I think that is the drawback, but it's also a good thing.
It's a different level and a different situation, but it is kind of the same problem that the Warriors are going to have this year, right? Where they have enough dudes that can score in different ways that that's going to be the biggest challenge. And thankfully, Duke has the best coach in the history of college basketball to manage that challenge. Because with a lesser coach, you could see this imploding where different guys are like, oh, well, you know, Grayson Allen gets all these shots or Jason Tatum gets all these shots or something like that. And you know that Kay is going to put a stop to that real quick if any of that kind of problem comes.
Yeah, Grayson, I saw him interviewed earlier on. He's on record in that interview as saying he didn't care as long as we won. And if he scored 11 points a game instead of 20, knowing he can score 25, that's fine by him. He don't care. So if he takes that mindset, that's going to be a good thing.
I feel kind of sorry for Luke Kennard. I think there are a heck of a lot of teams across the country that would say there is not a bad shot that Luke Kennard can take.
Totally agree.
They'd try and get him 15 plus shots a game, and they would expect him to average 20 points a game. And I think that's realistic. And I think that it's I think your comment about there's only one basketball, God, it's obvious, but it's also really, really dead on target. And I think Luke Kennard, is the guy who may get left out in the cold. He would, yes,
he'd be a
huge star.
Yeah.
Yes,
and he might not even start.
I got a question. I mean, is Luke Kennard, as a sophomore, does he look that different from how JJ? I actually think he may be a little more diverse offensively than JJ Redick was as a sophomore.
Yeah, his shot isn't as good.
Right,
so
but
let's be clear.
He's not a shooter; he's a scorer.
Yeah,
JJ didn't put the ball on the floor. JJ did not put the ball on the floor and go to the basket the way Kennard does. Not even close to it. And Kennard's not. I mean, he's not the shooter that JJ is. No duh. But he's not that far off. It's not like he's way worse.
No, agreed. Totally agree.
I mean, if I told you Luke Kennard was going to hit 45% of his three-pointers this year, would you think I was crazy?
Not really.
A little bit. But
he was 3 for 4 last night.
I can see it happening. And he's going to have open looks because everyone's going to be focused on Allen and Tatum and Giles.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't. Harry Giles wasn't there. Best big man. Many people think he will be the best big man in the country. He wasn't even there for the game.
Well, he was there, but he just didn't play. Neither did Sean Obi.
He danced a little bit.
He definitely danced. But yeah, let's get into this.
Wait. We're going to do the playground pick. I forgot about it. Remember?
Yeah. You want to do that now?
Yeah. Do you want to do that now, or do you want to do that once we're done with Mark?
We can do it. Shouldn't we do it now? We should do it now because we're sort of done talking about Countdown to Craziness. This is the time, right? This is when we do it.
We could have Mark judge as well.
Well, Mark is going to judge. So for those of you out there, we're going to play a little game. For those of you out there that before the podcast, we came up with this game that's based on the rosters that were there for Countdown to Craziness last night. Supposedly, the coaches divided them up playground style. So you know what? We thought, why don't we do the same? So here's what we're going to do. Sam and Jason are going to do playground style rules. I'm going to flip a coin. It's actually a Cuban quarter. And I'm going to flip this coin. Heads is going to be Sam. Tails is going to be Jason. Whoever wins the toss, you either get the first pick or you get the second two. And then after that, we're going to alternate until all the players are picked. Mark and I are going to judge which team is the better team. Sound good with you guys?
Yep, I'm ready.
Going down, Jason.
I'm ready.
All right, so the coin toss is a heads. So that's Sam, right? Sam, first pick or second two?
I will take the second two.
Okay, so Jason, you're on the clock.
Of course you will. Now, I want to point out that this is not based on how they played last night. So I'm taking Grayson Allen first, and I don't want him to be judged on what was a little bit of an off game. Now go ahead, Sam.
We're marking these down.
I know who you're taking.
You know who I'm taking?
I suspect. If you, in my opinion, there are three guys who are above everybody else.
I'm taking Emil Jefferson and Jason Tatum.
There you go. Yep.
All right.
I would have done the same.
We got Tatum. All right. Now we're doing alternate. Jason, you're up.
It's a lot harder right now, and there are three guys that I'm picking among, but I'm going to go Luke Kennard.
Luke Kennard.
Does he get another pick? I think he gets another pick.
No, we're doing alternate now.
Oh, alternate now?
Yep.
Oh, I'll take Frank Jackson.
Frank Jack. All right.
Matt Jones. That's easy. I had Matt ahead of Frank.
All right.
I had Luke Kennard behind both of them. I will take Marquise Bolden.
Chase Jeter.
Jack White.
Javin DeLaurier.
Hang on, Jack White. I'm writing these down. Javin. Go ahead, Sam.
I think that's it, isn't it? Or do we have to?
You guys left out somebody.
You left out some really good guys.
You have to have Frank and Justin Robinson.
Those are the two guys I have left. I wasn't sure. Okay, so I have to pick between Frank and Justin Robinson.
Or you could go with Pagliuca.
I could also take Brendan Besser. Don't knock on my boy.
Sam, Donald, are you getting what I'm getting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Harry Giles doesn't count.
Yeah, you're not allowed to take Harry Giles.
Oh,
why not?
Yeah, we excluded Harry Giles from the competition.
If every team needs a hype man, and so for last night, both teams had their own hype man. So you guys can pick one. I'm just saying.
I'll take the O Baby as my hype man.
Okay.
I'll go with Justin Robinson.
Justin Robinson. Okay.
Well, I had plenty of guards, so I need a big man. So I'll take Frank.
I mean, we only had two big guards left, or two big power guys, post guys left. So.
All right. So there's if you're not counting Giles and Obi, you got two guys left. So Sam.
Oh, do I still have to do that? You got the walk-ons? Oh my god!
You got to do the walk-ons too, man. We judged the entire team.
This is dumb. All right,
Pagliuca, and that leaves Jason with Brennan
Besser.
Actually, right. can I take Harry Giles at this point and give him Besser?
Nah, you guys changed the rules.
Jason, if you could listen, I don't want to disparage Brendan Besser, but Jason, if you can tell me a single thing about Brendan Besser's game, then I'll give you the game.
His hair was really slicked back. He had a lot of oil in it.
Yeah, he was rocking that. Miles Plumlee, I think, pioneered the greased hair pregame look.
Yeah,
I don't know how I feel about
I would like to point out about Pagliuca and Besser that. I mean, how freaking awesome would it be to be a walk-on to the Duke basketball team? Should we win a national title, these guys get rings.
Yeah, I watched the intros. They had it on the Blue Planet YouTube page. I watched the player intros this morning, and Brendan Besser goes out and he's like, he realizes very quickly, he's like, yeah, I don't know if anyone's getting super hyped for me. So he spends about half a second pimping it, and then he's like, all right, I'm just gonna go high five a handful of people and then go back to my spot.
Yeah. All right, let's review these teams, and then I'm gonna give it to Mark, and he's gonna help judge. So for Sam, we have Emil Jefferson, Jason Tatum, Frank Jackson, Marquise Bolden, Jack White, Justin Robinson, and Nick Pagliuca. And for Jason, we have Grayson Allen, Matt Jones, Chase Jeter, Luke Kennard, Javin DeLaurier, Antonio Vrajkovic, and Brennan Besser. All right, Mark. What do you got?
I'm going to lean slightly to Jason's team. Slightly.
Yeah, baby.
He's got
more experience. I got experience.
And offensive mojo, yeah. I'm going to lean Jason.
I think that my team's greatest weakness is the ball handling.
Yes.
You have Frank Jackson, so.
I'm basically trusting Frank Jackson to become the point guard, and that's kind of me projecting onto this team what I think might happen this year. Based on what we saw yesterday and just based on what we've seen in the past, I don't know that Grayson Allen or Matt Jones is capable of handling 25 minutes of point guard a night, but I think that Frank Jackson might be able to do that. And my team's strength is solely on the basis that you think Frank Jackson can be an effective, steady point guard. Because if he can, oh my God, we're going to crush Jason's team.
By the way, no, you're not. My strategy, Matt Jones is going to guard Tatum
Yep.
Matt Jones is going to make Tatum's life miserable, the way he made Grayson Allen's life miserable. And Grayson Allen is going to guard Frank Jackson, and you're going to struggle to get the ball up the floor. You are.
So
Your only chance is that Emile Jefferson is able to really control the inside, because my big men aren't as good as your big men. But I'm destroying you at the
That's
one.
the other thing. That's the other thing. I'm getting every rebound on this team in this game.
Yeah, you probably are. That's true. But luckily, my team's not going to miss.
So I will tell you that when we ranked, I did a very brief exercise to rank these players before we did this draft. So I ranked in the top 5 the guys who I think who should be, based on what we saw yesterday and what we know, the starting 5 until Giles comes back, which is Allen, Jefferson, Tatum, Bolden, and Jackson. I think those guys are like the most sensible starting lineup as far as like matching up traditionally against other teams. I'm not going to be surprised if you take Frank Jackson or Marquise Bolden out of that and sub Matt Jones in. But I thought that Allen, Jefferson, Tatum, Bolden, Jackson were the top 5, and I got 3 of those dudes in the draft.
See, I'm rocking with you, Sam. The reason why I'm rocking with Sam slightly is because, one, I think they have the best leader in Emile Jefferson. I think him being on the floor offsets the fact that there may be a little bit of less experience. But also, Emile Jefferson, if you guys watched last night, he could be a backup point guard. I don't know if you saw the end of the game where he basically
point guard. Sure walks the ball up the floor.
So I think that's the hidden treasure right here, is that Frank Jack can be the point guard, but I think Emile can handle the ball too, if necessary. So I'm leaning that way.
You might be underselling Justin Robinson's growth spurt. I'm just throwing that out there.
He's only 6'8", and apparently he's still growing.
They said he's growing.
Yeah.
He's gonna be like 7'2", at the end of the year. So just watch out for my boy.
But I know I don't want us to devolve into projections for the season yet. We're going to do that in a future podcast, or discussing who we think the starters will be. But if you think that they're going to be, and Sam, it appeared to me that you said that Tatum, Frank, and Bolden would all start. If you think they're going to be 3 freshman starters before Harry Giles comes back, I think you're crazy. I think the starters will be Grayson, Tatum, Emile Jefferson, Luke Kennard, and Matt Jones.
I don't see.
I know that's not a big team, and I know that's Tatum at the 4, and Kennard at the 3. But that's. I think those guys are going to be the starters at the beginning of the season.
I think one of Jones or Kennard is going to get squeezed for minutes, but we can do minutes later.
Yeah. Future podcast.
Let's get into the practice now that we have our teams here. Let's get into the practice that Mark has went to a couple weeks ago, I believe.
We talking about practice?
We want to talk about practice for a little bit. He went to a practice, and I actually, you know what? I'm just going to kick it over to Mark and let him tell you guys all about it. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, thanks. And I was incredibly excited, as Jason can attest to, and some of the private messages I sent to him and others. But so thanks for having me on. We are incredibly blessed to live in this area and be able to go to things like this. I went to the General Open practice a couple weeks back, maybe 3 weeks. And then last week, a big shout out to the Emily K Foundation. If you haven't heard about that, please research it. Please give. It's a great cause. But they do this benefit. I found out about it, and for $250, you get an open practice. And this time we were in the lower bowl. And more on that in a second, because the general practice you sit in the upper bowl. But you get the open practice. Then they do a tour of the Hall of Fame, lunch in the Swarf Hall. Coach K comes in and gives about a 20-minute speech, and then we all get to meet him, get an autograph item, and get our picture taken with him. And oh my God, it was like a kid at Christmas. So very awesome. I would encourage any of you guys to do it. This was the 6th year. I think they're going to have it ongoing, but it was the best $250 I ever spent, hands down. But I got there early. I knew exactly where I wanted to sit. It paid off. I'd been to enough practices to know kind of how K runs things and where they are. The players are normally, when they take a break or whatever, on the opposing team's bench during games. So that's kind of how they sit. So I sat on the edge of the scorers table and was fortunate enough that someone on the inside of the program sat right in front of me and talked to me the whole day. And that was just awesome. I won't reveal who that was, but the practice, man, it was just, it's fun watching Mike Krzyzewski run a practice. If for nothing else, that was good. But I learned some things. Watching them, you get to see them in practice. It's different from a game. But some of the little tidbits were very interesting, such as Matt Jones, I was told, won every competition the entire summer. Pickup games, if they played video games, if they played tiddlywinks, Jones was on the winning team. Did not lose. Now think of that for a minute.
He's a winner.
Did not lose the entire summer.
Are you
That's
telling
crazy.
me that the key to a potentially national championship team is tiddlywinks? Because if so, I'm playing right. I'm going to play right after we're done.
Could be. Just pick Matt Jones if you're going to start a team.
On it.
Yes. So that was really cool. Tatum, you see, we've talked a lot about him earlier, but he was really good. And you see the Kobe-esque type things, but it's just fun. They worked on man-to-man. They did not work on zone. I'll just tell you that right off the bat. The Emily K practice, we were told that the focus was going to be on defense. When we got there, they handed us a practice plan. It was handwritten by Kay. It went through, everything. Not surprising, everything is organized and timed down to the second. They have they passed that out to us, and I was told they have every single one of those from the 37 years he's been coaching. I have no idea how much room it takes to store that, but they have them all. What was really cool, we've often talked about how Kay molds his teams based on the personnel he has, right? He doesn't have a system that he tries to force the kids into. He develops a system for the kids. In his practices, he does not plan the next day's practice until the night before, every time. And it's based on where the team is at in that moment, things that they may need to work on as a team or individually. There's some individual items in there, where they're at, what he's trying to put in. And, it's a little harder in the one and done era. So every night before the next practice is when he develops his practice plan. I thought that was really cool. And again, it's a testament. I think you mentioned earlier he's the best coach in college basketball. For my money, he's the best coach ever in any sport. The man just thinks differently than normal humans think. But in terms of defense, they worked on full court man-to-man. They worked on half court man-to-man. They worked on two different half court presses. One was kind of a soft press where, the idea is just trying to use as much clock as possible and force the team to, get set up very late in the shot clock. And then off the other one, it's kind of the same setup, but if the ball handler moves to either corner, they immediately trap him. And so they're trying to force turnovers and, and get runouts. So that was pretty cool. One thing on the injury to Giles, I know there's a lot of angst about that, but it was stressed. And Kay even said it's the knee thing, the latest one he had, it was just a basic scar tissue cleanup or whatever. It was not minor. And I saw him that day. He was walking. He had stitches on, no brace at all. He was walking around. He looked fine. Last night at the event, he come out for player introduction. He did a little dancing in the center court. He moved fine. There was no favoring the knee. So I'm really excited to see him, and I think it's going to be sooner than later. based on everything that we know right now. I think we're going to see the kid play. It's just a matter of when. And, I'm sure they're being as careful as they can possibly be. But I don't know if you guys saw any of that on TV last night or not.
I was able to see all the intros. I watched it live, so I was able to see all the intros and stuff. And to me, it looked like, he came out and looked like he was going to play. He obviously didn't. I don't even think he warmed up.
He did not.
Yeah, but it seemed like he was very, like you said, he danced. He was running around, like when all the intros are going on and people are running, like jumping up and down and doing the choreographed dances and stuff. He was a part of all that. So it seemed like he was moving pretty well for someone who had just had his knee scoped a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, he moved around really well. He went out there when they were doing warm-ups. He didn't go through the layup line or anything like that. But he did walk out there. I actually thought he was going to jump up, get some shots up, but he didn't. So the wait continues. But I'm excited. I haven't been this excited about a Duke team since the 99 season. I'll just be honest with you. They've got so much talent. If it all comes together, and Kay talked about that last night at the end. I don't know if that was on TV or not, but he talked to the crowd a little bit at the end, and he stressed, do not take anything for granted. Stay humble. These guys are going to have to work, but it can be a very special team is the way he has put it. I had never met Coach K, believe it or not, in all these years. I was extremely nervous. But when it was my turn, I got up there. It's a really cool process how they do it. You hand your phone to the assistants, and then you go up, you shake his hand, you hand him the item. He didn't have a lot of time for small talk, and I expected him not to because, hey, he's got to sign 220 autographs. So, that was really cool. And then I got a picture with him with our arms around each other. That was nice. And then when I got my phone back, the guy had taken about 5 or 6 pictures for the entire process. So really, really cool event. Emily K, they do it every year, $250. And I don't know about you, but that's for a Rabbit fan like myself, it doesn't get any better. And I'll go ahead and tell you, that was my Christmas present for my wife. So worth every penny.
That's awesome. So one question, was it on a weekend or was it during the week?
They do it on a Saturday. Saturday morning started at 9:30 and practice starts at 10. And on the practicing, and Coach K talked to us during practice. It was very hard to hear, but based on where I was seated, I could catch a lot of it. But he said at the end that he used to have his practices be 2.5 hours to even 2 hours and 45 minutes. And he's evolved to shortening the practices. He said we go about an hour and 45 minutes, hour and 50 minutes max, but we go hard. And they believe me, they went hard. There were very few breaks. Everything was fast paced. You finish one drill, you go right into the next drill. The guys had to run sprints probably 3 different times during that practice for not getting set up fast enough for Kay's liking. So they go hard for an hour and 50 minutes. And Kay said he feels like that is more effective than the long drawn out practices where they get maybe a few more breaks. So that was pretty cool. But I want to tell you about one drill that they did. They did this in the other open practice too. This is really hard. They put 4 minutes and 15 seconds on the clock. They do a 3-man weave going from one end to the other, and the last guy lays it in. The other 2 guys stop at the wing. They catch passes from players on that side. They shoot jumpers, and then they go back the other way, and that's what you get going back and forth for 4 minutes and 15 seconds. They have to make 120 baskets, not points, baskets. You shoot it from half court, it counts as 1. And wow. I got to tell you, that looked strenuous. And Kay even said that is very hard for the guys to do. So they did it the first time and they hit 119. And so they didn't make the 120, and he made them do it again. Those guys were gassed. They were totally gassed.
Mark,
that was very neat.
Wait, I gotta know. Hold on. I gotta know. What were they on 119 and someone missed a jumper, or were they like on 117 and they?
No, the last basket made it. The guy hit a basket at the buzzer to get to the 119.
Okay, so it wasn't like someone had a chance to get to 120 and missed the shot.
No,
okay,
no.
That would have been a clutch moment.
Yeah.
I remember back in my freshman year, which was the 07-08 season. That was DeMarcus Nelson's senior year and Kyle Singler and Nolan Smith's freshman year. They had an open practice for the incoming freshmen for my class. And it sounds like it was in a similar format where like they bring everybody in and then they start having the practice and Kay was talking to us. And it's a little bit of a different, audience and scenario. But they did that same drill. And that's the only thing from that practice that I remember is watching them do that 4.5 or 4 minute drill with everybody shooting tons of baskets. I remember it just being like total sensory overload because there are so many basketballs going everywhere.
Yes.
And I remember just being floored at how much fun it was to watch that. And then also at the end, like you said, how tired all the guys look. I think that when they did it with us, they just barely hit the 120. Like they got like 121, I want to say.
Yeah, it's incredibly tough.
That. And they and when they got it, they all started freaking out. They're like, "Oh yeah, we did it!" And everyone was cheering. It was cool.
Yeah, it was cool. But some of the stuff I'm going to tell you, I think, is not a surprise to any of you. The guy coaches every little detail. He stops play a lot. Coach Capel does a lot of running the practice. Kay's the master overseer. I don't want to say Kay doesn't coach because he does, and he's in control the entire time. Coach Capel is like the guy that's making sure, okay, next drill, do this, get here, get there. So Capel is very much, more of a head coach in that sense than he is an assistant. So that was pretty neat. Kay still gets on players. You screw up and you're going to hear it. And poor Chase. I think that's the thing with Chase. He just makes mental mistakes. If he can ever get to where he limits those or gets rid of them, I think we're going to see the player we know is inside him. But Chase's problem is mental. That was very clear to me in practice.
That is some great insight. That is.
Yeah, I just want to go next time.
Yeah, I want to give you one funny thing he said. It's impossible to remember everything. It was one sequence. They do a lot of half-court scrimmaging, and then they'll do some full-court scrimmaging. Sometimes it's 4-on-4, sometimes it's 5-on-5. But somebody went up for a rebound. I can't even remember who it was, and they didn't get it. He stopped play, and in classic K, he says, guys, if you need to ask a question, you raise one hand. If you need to grab a rebound, you raise two effing hands.
That's awesome.
That was classic K right there.
That is really funny.
Yeah. Oh, and one other, some poor soul. There's always that idiot in every crowd, right? You're at a private practice. It's a practice, right? You're supposed to sit there, be seen and not heard, right? Well, early on, some guy thought it was a great idea. He had brought this big camera with one of those long tube things on it. And
selfie stick.
No. The big professional camera, right? This guy
had a long lens.
Yes, the long lens.
Like a telephoto lens.
So the way the gym is set up, behind the scorers table is where we sit. The seats on the other side where the crazies are, those are pushed back in, and they've got the extra side baskets. This fool gets out of his seat, walks around to the other side, and is snapping photos. And I'm like,
he didn't.
Oh my!
Like in the middle of the practice.
Yes,
basically.
yes. I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna murder you. And Kay notices him. And he says to an assistant, get this guy out of here. Get him back in his seat. I don't want people walking around. Now
I don't know what that guy thought he was going to get away with.
Yeah, that's the clean version of what he said. But it was some, yeah.
Use some more military language.
Yes, yeah, a little bit of more.
That's what he called it with Marshall, right? Military language.
Military language, yeah. But it was just a really, really cool experience. Something I would do again in a heartbeat. And I would encourage you, if you ever if you've never been to a K practice, go to one. It's worth it.
$250 donation to the Emily K Center. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Every penny goes to the Emily K.
That's a no-brainer.
I mean, compare that as an experience to like scalping an $80 ticket to a early season, low level of game.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, that sounds well worth it. That sounds more fun than that.
Yeah,
no
it was.
No comparison.
It was really cool. Yeah, and there were people that had come in from different parts of the country that had flown in to see it. So
I mean, we haven't. So in the history of this show, which is now coming up on 60 episodes, and we've been doing this for almost 2 years. We've never done an episode of this podcast all together in person. But I think that would be a great excuse for us all to be in Durham and to do it all together.
And we could bring our phones in. They had to be turned off to silent, but we could bring them in. We could take as many pictures as we wanted during the practice, as long as it wasn't flash photography. We could record. I recorded about 80% of his final talk to the team at the end of the practice. It took me a minute to realize, hey, I could be recording this. So I did that, and so it's well worth it.
Very cool.
That's just an incredible experience, and I'm glad we were able to get you on here to talk about it. Like, I mean, that's something that now next year I think we all have plans. We need to figure out how to get this podcast finally take it on the road, and we can start one of these I guess closed open practices.
Yeah, and again, thanks so much for having me on. I do want to get a plug in on one thing. Most of you guys on here were here when Jumbo was here. The guy had a great basketball mind, and he did these things for years called the phase post. He would break the season down into segments, and he would do write-ups. We have a team that does it now, and we work really hard on it. It's probably not as good as Jumbo's was. I'll fully admit that, but I would just encourage people, please join the discussion. We want to drive more discussion in that thread. We've added some new writers this year. You'll see them coming up in some of their later sessions, but I would, just encourage everybody to, just discuss Duke hoops and give us your thoughts, right? If I think Matt may be a sixth man and you don't, tell me why, or vice versa. But we just want people talking about Duke hoops. That's the goal, right?
And Mark, the reason we all love the DBR is because of the level of the discourse. I mean, people talk about it all the time. It's not just a rah website.
Yep.
And bulletin board. The bulletin board, the forums especially, encourage people to make constructive criticism, to challenge each other. And those threads, the phase threads, are a great place for people to do that. And if we're all yes men, if we all do nothing but debate how many minutes people are going to play and things like that, it gets to be really tiresome. And I think those phase threads are about as good a place as there is anywhere on the boards to discuss things a little more in depth, a little more detailed. And there are very, very, very few college basketball sites on the internet that strive for this level of discourse. And props to you and all the folks who are involved in those threads, because they really are remarkably insightful.
Thanks. And this season, above any other, is a great season to join in, because there's so many ways this could go. The lineup, who's going to sit, who's going to start? Are we going to play big, or are we going to play small? Is Tatum going to be at the 3 or the 4? There's so much good debate to be had about this year's team.
Absolutely. And once again, we want to thank you for coming on the podcast. All you out there, Mark Newton, a.k.a. Newton14 on the DBR forums. Reach out to him. He's obviously very well versed in the game of basketball. He's going to be talking about it all season on the forums, and just like we all are. and he's a great mind here. We appreciate you being back on the podcast. I think this officially makes you a friend of the podcast, like an actual friend of the podcast, and we'll have you back on soon.
Thank you. Thanks again, and I'm happy to come anytime.
And in our next segment, we want to quickly shift gears to the NBA and some news that came down in the last couple of days with regards to their new collective bargaining agreement. One of the things that was talked about being debated over the last few years has been the one and done rule, and there was talk that the NBA Players Union and the NBA owners would discuss that rule and implement something of a longer extent, a longer length, whether it be 2 or 3 years, in the new collective bargaining agreement. Well, the new collective bargaining agreement was officially, I guess, agreed to a couple days ago, and the one and done rule remains. So we want to talk about that for a little bit. I want to start with Jason because he had a lot of thoughts on this. So I'll kick it to you first, Jason.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't think the CBA has been officially agreed to yet. There maybe there's news that I missed. It hasn't officially been agreed to yet, but they've sort of begun to...
They've agreed on this, at least principle.
They've agreed on a number of aspects of it, and they're just sort of dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and getting that stuff done. And they have said that there will not be a change of the one-and-done rule. And I'm furious. I'm absolutely furious at the NBA and the Players Association. I don't understand why they have done this. It doesn't make... One and done makes no sense whatsoever to me. It's bad for college basketball. It's bad for the players. It's bad for the NBA. I don't get it. There should absolutely be a rule that is very similar to what they have in baseball, which is some of these kids are ready to go to the NBA right away. Look, it would have been insane for not for Kobe Bryant, but for Kobe Bryant, yes, or for LeBron James to spend a year in college. There's no point for a guy like that to spend a year in college. Some of these guys are ready for the NBA right away, and they should be allowed to go to the NBA out of high school. I don't understand why we are forcing them to come take classes that they don't want to take, pretend like they are actually part of a college campus when they really aren't necessarily invested in college at all. We're forcing them to go to school when they don't need to be going to school. These people are professional basketball players. That's what they've been probably for several years already, and they should get paid as quickly as they can. But if they go to college, they should have to stay in college for 2, probably 3 years. Let's move them along toward getting a degree. Let's begin to really teach them the things that college basketball can teach them. Let's make sure that they're actually going to classes, taking classes, proceeding toward graduation, and being the student athletes that we know college basketball is supposed to be populated with. I don't understand why the NBA didn't decide to change this awful rule. It shouldn't be one and done. It should be 2 or 3 and done with an option to go pro out of high school. And I don't understand it at all. I don't get why by the way, the owners kind of want this, kind of want to change it, but the players are the ones who don't. And I really don't understand that because the players are the ones, the existing players, should want to keep competition out of the league. They should want to hold guys back because the guys who come in are taking the jobs of current players. I don't understand it. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. But
I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a minute. I agree with you on most of what you just said. I think the one aspect that I was focused on was the last point you made, where the fact that there's 450 NBA player jobs, and there's only going to be 450. They're not expanding anytime soon. They're not adding any new teams or any new roster spots. So you would think that they would want to preserve their spot in the union as long as possible. But the devil's advocate part of it is this. The NBA is not doing a collective bargaining agreement on the NCAA. And I think their positioning is 1 and done, 2 and done doesn't really mean that they have to go to college. They just can't go to the NBA. They can go to the NBA D League. They can go straight to the NBA D League. They can go to Europe. They can go to China, but they don't have to go to college. But I think what this means now is that if the NBA isn't going to do something about the 1 and done rule, then maybe the NCAA has to do it. Of course, they're not going to because they're the NCAA. They won't even rule on the UNC allegations. But I think that's the devil's advocate here is maybe the NCAA has to do something about this and not the NBA.
I'm just not sure what the NCAA could do about it, right? I mean, if the players want to leave, the only punishment that the NCAA can have is on the schools that they came from. And, what are you going to, like, is the NCAA going to punish Coach K because Harry Giles left after a year? It doesn't, I'm not sure that you're addressing the issue here. And like Jason says, it's really on the NBA to change it. And I think I kind of agree with Jason. I don't know that I'm as fired up about it. But it does seem like kind of a crummy system for everybody involved if all these kids are coming in and then leaving after a year. So they're not getting much of the benefit of what you get from college. They haven't matured that much. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know what kind of statistics you could cite. But like, how much more mature are the guys coming out of 1 year of college versus the guys who used to come out of high school? Is there a better success rate for those guys sticking in the league? I don't know. I don't sense that there is. There are plenty of guys that leave after 1 year, and then you look back in 4 or 5 years and, they haven't done anything, or they're in the D League, or they're in Europe, or they're not playing basketball anymore at all. So I think I agree with Jason that baseball seems to have the best system in place, but at the same time, baseball has a much more robust minor league system. So the guys who are coming out of high school in baseball, they're 18 or 19 years old. They're still mostly aren't making it to the majors until they're like 21 or 22. Whereas in basketball, the expectation is as soon as you're on the team, you're a contributor on the team, or you're going to be very soon. Otherwise, you don't really have a spot there. And that's kind of where the difference between baseball and then like football and basketball comes, is that the best minor leagues for basketball and football are the ones that exist in college, which is not the case in baseball. Minor league baseball is a lot better than college baseball. So I don't know how you solve that without really devaluing the quality of college basketball. If all the really good and maybe it is by holding them in for 2 or 3 years. So it's really only the players who are leaving.
Well, half of the league is around because of this one and done rule. They're in like if you think about it, the one and done rule has been around for about 10 years now. So you would have to think that around about half of the league, if the first players that came out are still playing, basketball, that's 10 years. That's a seasoned veteran, but it's hard for them. I can see how it would be hard for them to want to change the system that got them that they benefited from in the first place. So that's the devil's advocate part. Jason, what did you have to say?
Well, first of all, addressing that, there really is a fairly small percentage of the NBA today that was one and done players. Most of the players in the NBA played longer than that in high school. I'm sorry, in college. So I don't know that they would look at it and go, "Oh no, the system that I was under." I just don't think that it's that makes that big a difference. But the biggest reason that I think the NBA needs to do this is it'll improve the game. I mean, is there any question that if you took these kids who go one and done and made them play for 2 or 3 years for really good coaches like Coach K and some of the other very, very good coaches in college basketball, that they'd be better prepared for the NBA? There's no question about that.
Well, the only difference being that when they're in college, they have limited practice time and limited interaction with the coaches. So, and I'm going to make up numbers here so that because I don't know what these actually are, but I think it's like 20 hours a week of practice. If you get how much better are you going to be if you have 20 hours, if you have, unlimited practice, say it's like 40 hours of practice a week with your NBA coaches or 20 hours a week with the college coaches. And yeah, maybe with Coach K, it makes a difference because he's really good. And there's probably a handful of college coaches that can provide something on the same level as the NBA quality coaching. But in the NBA, they're focused on basketball. I mean, you want to, part of the idea of getting to the league as quickly as possible is as soon as you get to the league, you're on the NBA trajectory. You get to practice like an NBA player. You don't have to worry about school. You're learning their lifestyle as opposed to the college lifestyle. And so I think that the kids want to get to the NBA as quickly as they can. But to your point, Jason, I think that the product is better if the kids coming in are more mature, even if they don't get that extra practice time. And that's where it really comes from. If they get the opportunity to live on their own a little bit within the confines of college, which,
They're going to play more. They're going to get more game experience, and there's no substitute for game experience.
They're not going to get the same life experience. They're not going to get the same level of coaching that they are in the NBA. And if the NBA, had a very robust system for, teaching the kids how to be adults, because I think that probably plays into the maturity issues. I mean, like look at our guy Jolly Okafor, right? All of a sudden, he went from being on a college campus where, most of his day is programmed, and he's allowed to have fun, during the off times, but most of the time he's scheduled to be doing things. In the NBA, it's like you go home and like that's it, and he can get in a car and drive 110 miles an hour over a bridge. And I don't know, I don't know Jolly Okafor. I'm not trying to tell you, I'm like his dad or something, and he should be following my lead.
No, but like he got in trouble. He got in trouble a couple times, yeah.
Right, and how much more prepared would he be to be out in the real world? And let's face it, being an NBA player is like barely like being in the real world. Right. If he came out even at 20 or 21 rather than at 18 or 19.
Well, and I'll give you another reason why the NBA should want kids to stay in college, and that reason is the casual basketball fans out there will get to know them a little bit better playing and starring in college basketball versus sitting on an NBA bench and working a lot in practice. Oh boy, hey, aren't you really excited about Andrew Wiggins? Have you heard how much he's playing in practice? I mean, come on. Now, Andrew Wiggins is a bad example because Andrew Wiggins would have gone directly out of high school to the NBA. But I would argue that spending the year he spent at Kansas didn't necessarily introduce him to America all that much more than if he'd gone directly to the NBA out of high school. The NBA is cutting itself off from stars because we're not getting a chance to get to know them until they get to the league and until they're, until after they've been in the league a little while. One of the things about college basketball is March Madness is one of the most watched sporting events of the year. And the NBA is not getting the full benefit of guys having a couple years in March Madness to become household names, for people to know their game and be really attracted to them and interested in them. And so I think that's another place where the NBA is missing out. And then the last thing is, I think it's bad for college basketball. I think that having these players for multiple years allows the fans to become more connected to them, and it makes them better players, and it gives us some certainty and some understanding of what teams are going to be like from year to year. I mean, goodness gracious, every single year we have no idea what Kentucky's going to be like. Oh yeah, I guess they're a top 5, top 10 team because they've got all these, new studs, but the college basketball fan doesn't have any idea how what any of the players on Kentucky look like from year to year. And to be honest, the same thing's starting to happen to Duke a little bit, more than a little bit perhaps. So it's bad for the college game that we have this happening, and I think that the health of the college game and the health of the NBA game are intertwined. How can they not be? This is people who love to watch basketball, and the NBA is doing a disservice to college basketball, and I think that's really, really unfortunate.
I think to kind of wrap it all up, I think the NBA is focused on improving the NBA product, and yes, there is. I believe that having a robust college basketball system will help that. But in their mind, their job is not to help improve the NCAA. Their job is to help improve their bottom line, their product, and there's more. I mean, if you think about it, there's more players now that are going to Europe or they're going to the D League that you don't hear about. The reason why is that the minor league system that we talk about that's so robust in baseball is college basketball. So I think that's kind of the wrangle, is that they don't control their own minor league system, whereas in baseball they do. I mean, even in football, the NFL has done a great job at staving off competition by saying that these guys who are freshmen and sophomores just aren't mature enough to be in the NFL, and they have to wait until they're 3 years out of high school before they are eligible. So I think it's just a matter of...
Leonard Fournette says hello. Leonard Fournette says hi.
Exactly. And there's a couple people who, over the years...
And before him, Jadeveon Clowney.
Yeah, who could have definitely been in the league and probably dominated, from the get-go. But because their NFL, their union is so strong, because their rules are so strong, and they've been able to hold those off, even through legal challenges in the case of Maurice Claret. I think that is the difference here. Maybe it's going to take somebody challenging that system legally. Maybe it's going to take somebody who says, hey, I shouldn't have to go to college for 1 year. I should be able to do what I want. And trying to get legal challenges, and that might be the next step. If the NBA is not going to do anything about it, if the NCAA won't do something on their end, like you said, their options are probably limited. The next step is probably through legal challenges. And now we're going to go to parting shots. I will start with Sam.
All right, I had 2 comments about the uniform aesthetics at Countdown to Craziness. The first is that on the white uniforms, you can't read the players' names. And it's a more general comment about the names on the uniforms in general. They're too small, and you can't read them. So that's a bummer. Thankfully, I know who all of our dudes are, even though we have so much turnover. But I hope that there aren't other teams out there with similar uniform situations, because I'm not going to remember who any of the players are. And I realize that sounds like a very old man comment. The
white waistbands. Hey, the white waistbands on those blue unis are slick. I'm telling you,
they're hot. Those are hot.
Okay, so the waistbands are not white; they are blue. What they were doing is they were folding them over so that you saw the white, the underneath band.
They looked cool.
And that's why they looked. That's why all those guys were wearing that shorts that made you think, "Oh, are we going back to the 1980s?" Because some of them were quite short. That's because they folded them over.
That was my second comment about the uniforms: is that the shorts look shorter.
Before I told you before the podcast that I knew we were going to be talking about the same thing. I was right.
So I don't know if it was entirely due to the shorts being folded over, because I noticed it on both sides of the team. Did they all have them folded in? Because I don't think so.
I think some of them did, because on the white, on team white, also in team blue. Because Bolden did not have them folded over, but I know Grayson Allen. I know
Bolden's were ones that I noticed. Bolden's were ones that I noticed were short. Because you could see all these guys' knees last night, and I feel like 5 or 6 years ago you couldn't see anybody's knees in college basketball.
Yeah.
And as somebody, I'm not an athlete, all right, but I attempt to do athletic things from time to time, and if I wear really baggy shorts, I have a couple basketball shorts that go below my knees. If I wear those to play sports or go running or do anything, they're really cumbersome, and it always bothered me kind of that the basketball players would wear those incredibly long shorts, because I never thought that they would contribute to them being good athletes. And I think that my thoughts are finally bubbling up to the highest levels of the sport, and the guys' shorts are getting shorter because they're realizing that they can be more mobile without all that, fabric, being around their knees and below their knees. So it makes me, not that I don't even remember. I'm not old enough to remember when the NBA had short shorts. So I'm not nostalgic about that, but it's at least good to see that the guys are like that. And what's really interesting now is that, they all wear all that, they wear all the compression wear underneath of the free flowing clothes. And the compression wear has gotten so expansive that now I feel like you see the compression wear coming out of everywhere, more so than you even see the uniforms. That was kind of my...
Did you see Jason Tatum last night? There's barely any skin on Jason Tatum.
Yeah,
he's got compression wear in his legs and his arms. And
yeah, if that's what it takes to keep them warm and keep them doing whatever sportsy things they have to be doing, then fine. That makes more sense than having lots of baggy clothing coming around. And I think you saw that the jerseys got tighter the last few years, and maybe it was only a matter of time before the shorts got that way too, because now everything's hyper maximized for ultimate sports exertion. So anyway,
This is also a trend in the NBA as well. Also, you might have seen this style of uniform on Team USA during the Olympics. Is something that's a style that is now kind of filtrated to the NBA as well.
It makes sense. Anyway, that was what I wanted to say about the uniforms. Jason, did you have a parting shot?
I do have a parting shot. And by the way, I've been looking while you've been talking about it, because I hadn't noticed it, because I'm clearly I'm not paying attention to the uniforms as much as you are. There are some guys on the blue team who had folded over their waistbands, and there's some who did not. So the uniforms were not uniform. All right, so my parting shot is this week, just a couple days ago, former Duke great Elton Brand retired from the NBA. He had sort of retired last year, and then the Philadelphia 76ers had some injuries or something like that, and they were like, no, wait, Elton, come on, play for us. So he was like a player-coach kind of sort of thing.
They also had a lot of maturity issues because they only had like rookies and sophomores on the team.
Maturity or lack thereof. So Elton Brand did officially finally retire this past week. And it is a great, great pity, I think, that there are many, many Duke fans, Sam's age or younger, who do not remember what a truly great, remarkable NBA player Elton Brand was.
And confirm, I don't remember him.
Yes. So there was an article written on a Clipper fan site where someone said, there's a case for saying that Elton Brand should be the first LA Clipper jersey to be retired. There's never been a retired LA Clipper jersey. And that there's kind of sort of, if Brand hadn't left the team when he left them, there's kind of sort of a case for Elton Brand being the first ever retired Clipper jersey. Elton Brand's first 8 years in the NBA were about as good as any first 8 years you will ever see. He averaged 20-plus points per game in 6 of those first 8 years. He averaged 10-plus rebounds per game in 6 of those first 8 years. He made a second-team All-NBA. He was 28 years old. He should have been right entering his prime, and he blew out his Achilles. And he was never the same. He would never average. Now, again, he was 28 when he blew out his Achilles. He would never average more than 15 points a game or 9 rebounds a game again. And this is a guy who you could book him for like between 20 and 25 points a game and between 10 and 12 rebounds a game. He was a force of nature in the paint. He was as good a big man as there was in the NBA back in the early 2000s. People, nowadays we think of the Clippers, we think of Chris Paul, we think of J.J. Redick, we think of Blake Griffin, and the Clippers are a really good team, a team that makes the playoffs every year. I'm telling you that for 30-plus years, the L.A. Clippers were the worst franchise in the NBA. They were terrible. They were awful. They never made the playoffs. Well, Elton Brand got there, and he led them to the playoffs one year I believe it was 2006. And that year he led them to the playoffs. He was an absolute beast. He averaged 25 points per game when they made the playoffs. They had an amazing series they played against the Phoenix Suns back when the Phoenix Suns were the best team in the NBA. The Clippers took them to 7 games. During that 7-game series, this was the second round of the playoffs. And again, this is the Clippers who are terrible, just awful. This would be like the 76ers making the second round and playing the Golden State Warriors. Brand averaged 30.9 points per game, 10.5 rebounds per game, 4.5 assists, and more than 3 blocks per game in that series. He was unbelievably dominant. And, if they'd gotten over the hump there, I think the Clippers might have made the NBA Finals. They were that good that year. And then he blew out his Achilles, and he was never the same player again. And I just want, for folks who have spent the past decade plus seeing a shadow of the real Elton Brand, I wanted to remind them from 2000 to 2006, this dude was just a crazy stud. Was on his way to perhaps being the best Duke player in the NBA, in NBA history. And yes, I'm including Grant Hill and Kyrie Irving and some of the other really, really great players who played for Duke and then went on to the NBA. Elton Brand was that good. But for an Achilles injury, it's a real pity. So Elton, tip of the cap to you. Dude, you had an amazing career. And as much as my parting shot here has been sort of feeling sorry for the bad luck that caused him, the bad injury that caused his career to not be all that could have been and the such, I will say he's still a guy who made about $170 million from his NBA salary. So it's not like he suffered too much. So Elton Brand, thanks for being a wonderful representative of Duke University.
Quick plug, his jersey is for sale in the Duke Student Store with his name on it. And it's one of the older style jerseys.
Yes, it is.
I like it.
My parting shot, I just want to it's been a few weeks since we had our last podcast, and I want to give a quick shout out to the Duke football team. Last weekend, they traveled to Louisville and played probably the best player in the country and one of the best teams in the country. to a stalemate for almost the entire game, all the way down to the last minute. I think what people took from that game is that, on one of our first games on the national stage, I mean, since that Notre Dame game, but this is one where you're facing a team that people said, I mean, we're going to just roll over us. And Louisville played well, and we did too. And I think that is something that, while we did lose, I think there was a couple of key moments in the game that if they had gone the other way, we probably would be looking at least driving for a win or a chance to win. There was a fumble that we recovered that they called back because they said that the player had lost had his forward progress stopped and that the whistle had blown.
Horrible call.
Completely
Terrible
bogus
call.
because they have to have blown the whistle first and they didn't.
Atrocious call.
And then there was the unfortunate roughing the kicker penalty at the very end of the game that gave them a new set of downs, and they scored in the very next play to make it 24-14. We have that. We blocked that, or they missed that kick, and we could have driven for a chance to tie or win the game. But I just want to give them a little shout out because I think that was a game that really, that combined with this bye week really could set a tone for them to get a couple more wins in ACC play as we move forward. We do hit a tough stretch of our schedule. A lot of our teams that are very, very good are in the back end of the schedule, including UNC, Virginia Tech, and Miami. But I think this team has a little bit of fight in them, and I think we're going to see that on Saturday. We play Georgia Tech, and I liked the what I saw from that team, a team that had every reason to mail it in, and most teams against Louisville have mailed it, including some top 5, top 2 teams, have just completely looked terrible against Louisville, and we didn't. And I think that is a statement that hopefully we can carry on through the rest of the season.
Yo, and by the way, you talked about that atrocious, terrible, horrible no fumble call. It was like the next play or 2 plays later, I think, Louisville went for 80 yards, an 80-yard run. Yep. It was a 10-7 game. We were deep in their territory, and they make that horrible call, and literally like the next play or 2 plays later, I forget what it was, they went for 80 yards, and it sort of changed the complexion. It absolutely changed the complexion of the game. It went from 10-7 to 17-7.
And it was the same thing on that on the roughing the kicker. Like the very next play, they scored a touchdown and put the game out of reach. And I think those 2 calls overshadowed what was a tremendous effort by our team.
Yeah, and when we sort of alluded to this game a few weeks ago on the podcast, and we were like, oh, it's a 34-point line, and none of us were like, I'm taking Duke. Oh, man, 34 points. Duke's definitely going to cover that. We were all like, we could lose by 50.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson is the real deal. I think that was clear. He even I think gave some props to our defensive line and our defensive secondary just for the fact that I think we have played him. I know they lost to Clemson, but I think we're the team looking at what they've accomplished this year. We're the team that's really gave them the most fits, and I think that is something to be said about our defense, and something to be said about the tenacity and strength that our team has. So I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the season. But I think that's going to do it for episode 59 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. This has been a lengthy one, and we hopefully, if you're at the end, thank you for sticking around because we obviously had a lot to talk about. We're very excited about basketball coming back, and we're also about to get back into football after this little break here. You can find us on the DBR forums. You can also find us on Twitter, or not Twitter. We're all on Twitter. Everybody's on Twitter in their individual names, but you can find us on the boards. That's where you want to come talk to us. DukeBasketballReport.com. Thank you very much to Mark Newton for coming on the show. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Sam, as always. And for now, Duke Band, take us home.